Hello, how is everybody doing? Um, there's a lot going on. A lot going on. Way more than could possibly be covered in one video. So we're just gonna chip away at it. And there's just a few things I wanted to talk about right now. If you follow astrology at all, you've probably heard about there is a big controversy with Stephen Forrest, who is the kind of one of the founding thinkers to the school of evolutionary astrology. Um, you know, that's there's a couple different people instrumental in kind of bringing that school of thought out there. Jeffrey Wolf Green is another one. But Stephen Forrest definitely has been like one of the biggest names in evolutionary astrology for the past, few decades. Um, and yeah, like respected in the community generally before this. Very influential, wrote a lot of books that have a lot of wisdom about astrology in them. But, um, released a podcast recently where he used the N-word on purpose on a podcast with his black co-host. um, who he's partnered with on this astrology app. Um, and they were talking about a shadow work course that they were going to do together. uh, there's a whole lot to the story. It's a big controversy. It turns out that Stephen Forrest seems to have a relative who was the first Grand Wizard in the Ku Klux Klan. So obviously, we're not our relatives. I have very problematic relatives that I would not want anyone to relate me to in in my current incarnation, right? So, but he kind of made light of this connection, dismissed it, made light of his use of the word. Um, long, complicated story, super short. He basically didn't apologize and instead really doubled down on his uh, use of this word as an old white guy, um, and really got super defensive. And apparently, also, like some communication was released that he also asked all of his teachers not to comment on it, and basically kind of just like doubled down on his stance and was like, look, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a racist, and kind of like your problem if you think I am, but really kind of defended his use of the word and also was sort of just trying to make it go away. And all of this behavior is very problematic. He did not issue any kind of real apology that was sincere. And it's brought up a lot of stuff for a lot of people. A lot of people. Um, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a well, I can imagine, I think. I don't know what it's like to be a black astrologer or person hearing this news out there and, just knowing that there are people who are still holding these viewpoints because even worse than I shouldn't say that. The use of the word is horrible, but also horrible in the same podcast was him basically admitting that he didn't realize until he was in his 30s that like black people were just as smart and capable as white people. um like horrifying stuff, uh where you're like, wow, there are still people who think this way, huh? But like the fact as well that he's, teaching schools on evolutionary astrology, where we're supposed to be talking about the growth of the soul and the maturing and the learning of lessons and like healing work and, you know, transcending and including things. Yeah. So but this happens all the time, right? This is an old story where you think someone's a guru and you put them on a pedestal, and then it turns out that they are not living in through their actions the words that they're saying. Um, And this is very upsetting for people who follow these leaders. It happens all the time, you know? Like Kundalini yoga was a big, big part of my like healing journey and coming back to find a form of spirituality that resonated with me after a lot of religious trauma, finding myself and um, healing after, you know, this very catastrophic like divorce and abusive relationship. And it really kind of helped me save my life at one point. And then, like, later, this whole big sex scandal comes out about the person who founded this school of yoga, you know, and abusing his students and things like that. So this happens all the time. And I guess anytime something like this does happen, we have to all look at the like very complex issue of like separating the person from the message. And, you know, things like Kundalini yoga are like very ancient, thousands of years. Things like schools of astrology are like we're again picking up on the most ancient principles, you know, and practices that go back to way before civilization. So we have to then, I guess, just go through the very complex process of like, I don't know, excavating. I'm getting like imagery of the archaeology dig or something like, can we dust off, you know, and maybe that's even a bad metaphor because of all of the you know, really problematic ways in which like white male archaeologists have gone through the remains of history and put their own cishet white dude interpretations on things, like finding bones in the ground and deciding that they know what gender people identified as and what kind of roles they played because interpreting it through their own Eurocentric, you know, whatever 1950s, 1920s era lens. Um, yeah, this happens all the time. So I guess we just continually have to excavate. Just excavate is feeling like the word. And that's a very Plutonian word. And Pluto's very activated right now. And you know, all the outer planets represent like the shadows coming to light and the subconscious being revealed, and ultimately for the purpose of healing, but like Uranus often shocking along the way. Pluto, like things have to die for the new things to be reborn. And like that's hard to let go sometimes of like the ideas we had about people or, you know, situations or philosophies or whatever. You know, things that we came to define ourselves by. So, Lama Owens gave a definition of grief in one of our classes the other day that was that grief is when you lose something or someone that was like a measure by which you defined yourself. If, you know, someone who helped you know who you were. um, because then part of you is dying as well. And I definitely had that with, I kind of had that with people who represented almost every single different side of me last year, all die in a row. And that's been a really challenging grief process to move through. And we're all going through this as systems, structures, leaders, you know, public figures, again, philosophies, whatever, ways that we were told the world was, ways by which we came to define ourselves, ways by which we were told we could, nay, should define ourselves. All of a sudden, we're seeing like the illusion, Neptune behind them, and we're seeing the structures, Saturn, Virgo, fall away. So, if we take a look at the chart of the moment, you know, as above, so below, meaning what's happening up there is what's happening inside of us. It's what's happening in the world. Um, so kind of all of these themes, you know, not only are we talking about the outer planets still forming this trine, Uranus, where's our drawer? Like we've got Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, Jupiter is still at early degrees of Leo, so kind of getting activated there. Not part of the trine necessarily. Um, and Neptune in Aries. So these are all part of, well, this is all part of that basket configuration, right? And then we've also kind of got a trine forming here as well that's bringing this Venus who just entered into Libra into the mix. I've also got Odysseus plotted on here. We're gonna come back to this Odyssey story of Odysseus and Circe, probably in another episode. Um, yeah, as part of my ongoing endeavor to be you know, part of the movement that's already out there of people looking to kind of look at the real story. I mean, real, what's real? Look at alternative translations of some of these mythologies that we've all come to hold as truth. And as we're all getting, the opportunity to question what we've held as truth. And Jupiter represents truth seeking, um, you know, and in this flowing aspect with these outer planets of transformation, of shock and surprise, of upheaval, like I think we're going to be continually called to like tear down our myths and let our leaders fall, right? And open to what new creation could come forth as a result. A lot of these aspects that I have up here right now are quintiles. We've got quintiles and septiles, these otherworldly aspects. There's a lot of otherworldly energy resonating right now. As I think we're being called to really look to the more than human realm, um, into these things that have, persisted, that have been ways of orienting ourselves and knowing who we are since long before capitalism, since long before patriarchy, since long before these structures, right? Um, and yeah, I mean this this whole controversy with Stephen Forrest, I know for myself and other astrologer friends, like has really just activated our own wounding as well. Like not only are hearts breaking for, the people of color who have been subjected to some of the most horrific atrocities, as a that any human could ever experience. Um, and having that just treated so flippantly by someone who has no right to speak of such things is just devastating. And then also activates, I think, for a lot of us, just our own experiences of othering and wounding, and when, you know, the reminder that like say the wrong thing to the wrong person and you could be killed, as one of my friends recently pointed out. Like we've had to hide who we were for millennia since Christianity really took over, and the Roman Empire started kind of eradicating witches and pagans and everyone who used to just be known as like the healers, the helpers, and started demonizing them. It's like we've had to hide, and we still have to hide, and people are still getting murdered every day for being queer and trans and of a skin color or a creed or belief system other than the one in control of the resources and the government, the majority in control. Not majority in terms of numbers, sorry. I mean just the people in power holding the majority of the power. I'm not feeling very eloquent today. But so the nodes of the moon are these points where the orbit of the Earth and the orbit of the sun, sorry, the orbit of the Earth and the orbit of the moon intersect. They're invisible points in the sky, um, with wobbly orbits that are uneven, and so they form circles in the sky, and they intersect at 2 points, the north node and the south node. So these are points that we can kind of look at them as like karma and dharma points to oversimplify. The south node representing karma, which doesn't mean punishment, it just means action. It means where we have found ourselves as a result of our actions, our own individual actions in this lifetime, across multiple lifetimes, if that resonates for you, as a result of the actions of our ancestors that created the circumstances that we were born into, that we find ourselves now, the actions of our family, the actions of our culture, just all of the different actions that all of the different beings have taken to get us to where we are right now. It's like opening scene of the movie, the hand you're dealt in cards, yada yada. So the north node then represents, we could say, the Dharma point. So this is like if the south node is the hand that you're dealt, the north node is how you play your cards. The north node is like where we're trying to get. We may or may not. I think we get there in fits and starts. I think the idea that anything in the universe is a straight line of is like a capitalist Protestant work ethic kind of myth, like that there's a progress and there's a winning and there's a, step by step plan we can follow to achieve some kind of victory. No, I think it's a continuum, and we're continually having to go back to the South Node and learn lessons again that maybe we only sort of learned the first time, or, that we're having a new experience of in some degree. And sometimes we move, and then we move forward and into some new stage, North Node. We gain some kind of realization or awakening or growth. And, then at that new stage, there's new challenges, and we have to go back to the South Node again. So, and obviously it's more complicated than that, but that's one way we can kind of look at it. So the nodes of the moon, they move opposite to the direction that the rest of the planets appear to move. All of this is a grand illusion, which is a whole other subject. Because what is reality? But yes, to our perception on Earth, the planets move in zodiacal order, this clockwise order, this direction. And but the nodes of the moon, so when we say planets are in retrograde, like the infamous Mercury retrograde, right? That would be when Mercury moves anti-clockwise. The rest of the planets move this way, and then one planet stations retrograde, they start moving that way. Well, the nodes of the moon, their standard direction of movement is retrograde. And then when they go retrograde, they start going clockwise. So they move anti-clockwise. They move against the clock. This is part of why time gets really weird when we get around eclipses. It's not a real thing anyways. Again, these kind of constructions that we build so that we can function in this 3D reality, but um, not the ultimate reality. So nodes are kind of portals. Like, I've heard them described as, I think Rick Levine says this, that they're portals to the other world. Um, And I think part of it is to do with the fact that, yeah, their motion is against the clock. So when you open ceremonial space, for example, like one kind of common pagan tradition is to walk in a anti-clockwise circle. You're winding the clock back. We are stopping the typical day-to-day 3D world time. We are stepping into ceremonial time, right? So eclipses eclipses also happen at the points at these points. Eclipses happen at the points of the nodes of the moon. So, anytime we're talking about the nodes, it's like we are entering portal time. We are walking backwards. And eclipses are really this like, I call them opposite day. They're these moments when time stands still, when night becomes day, day becomes night, all of the air gets sucked out of the room, the shadows disappear. Like it is like a collective pause, a collective holding our breath, and that really wild things can happen around these times. Um, they're very energetically powerful, and I think there lots of research to be done, but there is something about these intersecting points of orbit where it's like I think there are sort of like maybe off ramps to some of these other timelines and some of these other dimensional experiences that are always here, present with us, as the Irish pagan tradition says, it's not heaven, it's not the underworld, it's the other world, the realm of the spirits, the place where the dead dwell. It's right here, it's with us. It's just a different lens on that experience. So think we can kind of look at the nodes as these portal points, but there are also times when, like, stuff we've been trying to hide is going to come out. Like eclipses, really highlight things that maybe we were trying to keep hidden. There are times when in ancient astrology, actually, basically, like a lot of astrology kind of developed because of eclipses, because they were these shocking phenomena that people really wanted to understand, and they noticed that chaotic, wild things kind of tended to happen on Earth at the same time that these wild things were happening, you know, and the correlations. And one of the most common ancient correlations with what happened on Earth when eclipses were happening in the sky was that the king would die, oftentimes. So, leaders falling from grace, can correspond with literal deaths, but like, yeah, the fall of public figures is definitely a big association with eclipses. So we've got this eclipse coming up, which is also in Leo, the sign of the sovereign, the sign of the monarch, the sign of the public shining figure. Um, it's also like the sign of courage and our heart, think the cowardly lion. It's a sign of creativity and play and spontaneity. And like there's, the playful lion cub, and also like, the noble hearted lion, uh, that is, watching over the pride. And then there's like the egocentric dictator. These are all different faces of the same archetype, right? And everything contains, the possibility for great shadow, the possibility for great light, which I don't even know that I like those terms, the possibility for wondrous, amazing things, and the possibility for really like terrible things. Um, and also everything is a polarity in the zodiac. So, when we invoke one sign, we can kind of look to the other sign for some of the remedy and some of the problems to look out for as well. So the nodes have spent the past 18 to 19 months in Virgo and Pisces. Um, Virgo being kind of order, structure, discipline, daily routine, organization, um, and Pisces being the polarity, right? So it's like if Virgo is structure, discipline, order, keeping everything kind of neat, together, predictable. Pisces is like dissolve all boundaries. Pisces, the fish, the symbol being the double fish, and related very much to the ocean, related to our emotions, related to, modern rulership is Neptune. Music, the god that rules over music and art and spirituality in the kind of ultimate like Tao sense of the word, like not the not the ism, but the thing itself, right? The experience of transcendence, the experience that the mystics get to, right? The where you're at when you dissolve the boundaries. And then Virgo would almost be, you could even kind of look at this as like a polarity that helped create a lot of organized religion, right? So it does get associated with this a lot. Virgo, putting order, structure, discipline, routine, daily practice, gatekeeping even on the experience of oneness and transcendence. And part of this historical story of, taking spirituality, oneness, connectedness with nature, connectedness with the divine, connectedness with the dead, connectedness with these other realms, that used to just be kind of the stuff of direct experience, and then making it a thing that only certain people had access to. They were gating. And yeah, that like if you paid money to the church and did what these powerful men said, then you could be saved. But it became less about experiencing it directly and more about like this transactional way of trying to kind of buy safety for your soul, right? This capitalist paradigm imposed on what should be this oneness flowing thing. So we have moved out of those signs now into Leo and Aquarius. Um, and Leo, again, the sovereign, the individual, also. This is like our uniqueness, our ability to be our authentic selves, to let our true heart shine through. Like, this is very important now more than ever, especially. Um, and Aquarius represents like the collective and the people. So it's like if Leo is the monarch, Aquarius is the people. If Leo is the individual, Aquarius is the collective, and we need it basically like part of the invitation of this axis and this time is like, can we be individuals who are also part of a collective? Like, can we have a higher mind? And that's kind of a Pisces thing, I guess, but can we come together for the good of all involved to create a more egalitarian structure, um, where the rulership, the sovereignty is shared among the people, um, but without completely losing our individuality, right? And also, like, yeah, there's a lot of danger in collective group thinking as well, right? We're seeing a lot of the shadow of that right now. We have many times throughout history. So it's like we can't have all one or the other. We have to really learn to work with these energies. Um, so the eclipse is happening at 20 degrees of Leo. Um, and let's see, I have a chart for that as well. And you can't look at this eclipse chart or think about this eclipse in my mind without oh no, where did my chart go? Without hearing the song Total Eclipse of the Heart, because not only did Bonnie Tyler just die recently, pour one out, but it's the eclipse in Leo, it is the eclipse of the heart. And some of the events that are unfolding now, Stephen Forrest being one very small example. There's a lot of bigger things going on showing us kind of what happens when we aren't in touch enough with our heart, when our leaders are disconnected from an actual heart, from actual courage, and are kind of getting carried away with the dictatorial, the power hungry side of things. Um, but this is the chart for the eclipse. And these are flowing, otherworldly. This is the septiles in quintiles. These are creation energies. These are otherworld connection energies. These are sort of the like metaphysical energies. And there's a lot of connection and flow between, again, like some of these outer planets. Really, like the personal planets, the luminaries. No, sorry, just the sun. The personal planets, like there's almost this diamond shape being formed, but everything is pointed right at Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto being the Lord of Compost, the Lord of Transformation, Hades in Greek mythology. Um, Again, the one who's going to bring the subconscious forces out, whether we like it or not. Pluto, my astrology teacher Lawrence Hillman says Pluto says transform or die, and maybe both is kind of my addition. Probably both. But like what creation that because that's how the new creation comes forward. And Leo drawing even creative energy from the death. Like can we let the things die that need to die so that something more beautiful can be reborn, so that something more collective can be reborn from these kind of old egotistical structures, the old belief systems, Jupiter. Um, Juno was also like in a very close alignment here. Juno was the wife of Zeus in Greek mythology, also known as Hera, and really represents partnership and balanced partnership. And in the Saturn ruled sign of Capricorn, that like we are like, what have we been partnering with? Literally, metaphorically, like where might those structures and those partnerships need to be composted? Like, can we make balanced partnerships in the context of the collective? Like, who are who are the old gods? How can we partner with the new ones? Like, yeah, again, I think just compost the mythology is a big invitation of right now. Um, there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, but I don't know how much of it I want to talk about right now. So if we look at the decans of Leo, the decans are, oops, the decans um, are part of ancient Egyptian astrology, basically, and they correspond to just certain parts of the zodiac. So the North Node, and the eclipse um, are both happening in the third decan of Leo, which this one right here. Um, so this is a part of the zodiac that is double ruled by Mars. The eclipse will be happening in a Mercury ruled part of the chart, but we've got a lot of Martian action and Leo. So we're seeing that with war, with, dictators, with all of the challenging things that are happening right now. And that's also like the public figures falling, right? Like a Martian thing happening to a Leo person. So the third decan of Leo, I'm referencing the guidebook that is excellent, the 36 decans that Kira Ryberg wrote. Kira Ryberg is an amazing astrologer. I recommend everyone check this guidebook out. So she refers to it as defending your territory. The invitation is like, what would you do to stay at the top? Um, and I say, like, the invitation of the eclipse, like, the eclipse is literally when the moon gets its place in the sun. The normal order is inverted. The night world wins. The moon moves in front of the sun and blocks it out. We've been in this solar dominated paradigm for so long that is go, do, make, achieve more, conform to this one schedule that we have decided works for everyone. Forget the fact that humans, for like all of history until the electric light bulb, used to, for example, sleep in like 4 hour increments. Like there wasn't this concept of like the 8 hour night and the 8 hour day. That is an invention of capitalism built around, getting people to work factory shifts. Um, humans evolved to sleep basically for kind of like 4 hours at a time, wake up 4 hours at a time, even in, like the 1800s, again, before like the Industrial Revolution. People would still do this. Like they would get up in the middle of the night and there's lots of evidence of this documentation. Like they would have people over to their house at like midnight, for dinner. And even like Nikola Tesla and like Albert Einstein, some of these scientists who were actually completely spiritual, by the way, and very much believers in communicating with the dead, with the other realms, like not there was never this hard divide between science and spirituality until recently, this myth was perpetuated again. This is not actually how these scientists thought. That they would get up in the middle of the night. They would work from like 12 to 3 in the morning was kind of said to be this really magic hour. And I find that to be true myself. And I try to capture this window whenever I can. And it's hard to make that happen and then also conform to the things that happen in the day world, right? Um, so what happens when the sun is obscured? When your sun falls into shadow. And again, not trying to make the whole thing about Stephen Forrest, but shadow work, right? Like when you're in your place in the sun in a prominent position, I think he has a Leo 10th house, which I do as well. But hopefully hopefully managing things a little better. Um my moon's there, so I think that helps. We've got some night world up there. Um, it's the only planet I have there. But yeah, like when you're a prominent figure and you haven't done your shadow work and you're trying to teach other people about shadow work, that's very problematic. And the night world will have its day. Like that truth will come out. Um, so Yeah, like this decan just really refers to, again, kind of like power hungry leaders, the conquerors, the people who will kind of do anything to achieve their goals. Kira also talks about kind of like this is also like mama bear energy, right? It's like how far would you go to defend what you believe in? It depends what you believe in, kind of how, I don't know, moral or who that quest is serving, right? Like one of the quotes that really stood out to me was this it's an area of the zodiac that kind of relates to like love and strife, scapegoating, and being defensive as a baseline. So again, the forest explanation is just a good example of that. But also, we can find many examples of that. I mean, Donald Trump is like the freaking poster child for that. Like, never apologizing for anything, defensiveness. And it's like, why? Because they were hurt. And that's the rest of this sentence from the guidebook. They put up walls to protect themselves from being further hurt. Like, right? Nobody just comes out of the womb that way, I believe. We are all products of trauma. And wow, did Trump ever have a freaking traumatic childhood, right? Like, his dad was super abusive. So now he has perpetuated that cycle because he did not do the healing. So it's not an excuse by any means. It's a reason, but it's a reason that we have to do the plutonic subconscious work of bringing that subconscious material to the light so that we see what we're dealing with and what's actually motivating us. Mars is like the carrier out on Earth of the, plutonic subconscious realms. And like, this is our motive. Pluto's our motivation, but we just don't realize it. I think that's why everything is kind of concentrated on him right now in terms of this creative energy. And I mean, we could look at other aspects, but this is long enough already. There's lots of things going on. But yeah, I mean, that's what I feel like I just want to focus on for right now. Um, you know, what's Mars carrying out? And Mars in Cancer especially is like acting on emotion, acting on instinct. Um, the trauma stored in our bodies is motivating us, and we think we know what we want, and we're acting on that. That's Mars, is how to get what we want. But like our body, what's stored in our bodies, the trauma, what's in our subconscious, Pluto, it's like that's our motivation. We just may not realize it. But yeah, by engaging in the conscious activity of healing and truth seeking within ourselves, as well as in the world, Jupiter in Leo, looking in our own hearts and finding the truth and demanding that from our leaders. Um, on the eclipse day, by definition, the moon and the sun are on opposite sides of the sky. So, yeah, how are we feeling in our collective body? Like Pluto and the North Node being here as well, like how can we actually transform through connecting with what is stored in our collective body, what is stored in our individual body, like confronting these traumas? Can we get the gifts of the South Node of like being individuals? Yes, like that's a beautiful thing. Creating things on our, you know, of our own unique accord are the gifts that we give to society. These are beautiful things, but like, can we create something better than what we've had? I think that's all I'm going to say right now. So, more to come. Take care of yourselves out there. I guess I should also say that to learn how the eclipse is going to impact you, to learn how this nodal shift is going to impact you, you would look at the houses of your chart that it falls into, because that changes for everyone. Like the nodes are in the same sign, the eclipse is happening in the same sign, but where Leo is in your chart, where Aquarius is in your chart, will depend on your unique incarnation. So that is something you can find out through looking up your birth chart on a site like AstroSeek or astro.com. You can come see me for a reading. If you're in Cork, I do in-person drop-in office hours every Thursday at Dervish Bookshop. I'm always available online. And yeah, I mean, just hold fast, take care. Probably hear more from me before the weekend is over.